Good evening, everybody. It was another Wednesday night. Welcome to the Wednesday Night Live on Farm Life. Brent Adams with Fastline Fast. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
Sir, I'm doing great, man. It's fall. We're having a ball. There's a lot going on here. It's a busy time, but we're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really is. And to be honest, hurricanes are not helping the matters
Yeah,
much.
that is not fun.
But we have the pleasure with us tonight. We have an absolute pleasure for somebody that I enjoy working with very dearly. Is Pam Knox. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing great.
Pam, I didn't let everybody know. Introduce yourself to everybody, and so we all know who you are. You are our lifesaver at times.
All right. Well, my name is Pam Knox. I work at the University of Georgia as the director of the Weather Network there. I'm also an agricultural climatologist, so I study how climate, weather, and agriculture all interact together. And I live in Athens, Georgia.
Now, Pam, we've had kind of a unique weather this year, have we not?
Well, every year is a little unique, but one of the things that's really struck me this year is just how many hurricanes we have had. I mean, we're up to a Delta hurricane, so we've already gone through all the regular names, and we're in the fourth of the Greek alphabet, and we still have plenty of tropical season to go, so it would not surprise me if we saw another storm or two come up ahead.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and now we've had 3 in the Gulf this year, which has been interesting to say the least because of where they landed.
Yeah, we've had more than that. One of them went west to Texas, though, so you don't really think about that one. But we've had 3 that pretty much hit Louisiana, and now, of course, looking at Delta, we're going to probably have another one hit there on Friday.
Yeah, and that is well, we've got a few graphics we'll go with tonight, but yeah, it's definitely. What are your thoughts as we look at Delta right now? What are your thoughts on Delta?
Well, Delta is a pretty typical October hurricane. It didn't come all the way from Africa as the ones earlier in the season did, but it formed here in the Caribbean Sea and has been moving pretty steadily to the northwest. It started out a little bit south of Jamaica and has been moving to the northwest for a long time. It just cut across the northern tip of the Yucatan. I have only seen a few pictures so far from Cancun, which is right at that tip. But what I've seen looks pretty bad. It came on shore as a strong Category 2. It was up to a Category 4, which means winds of 130 miles an hour, miles per hour or more. It was an incredible amount of wind, and the sea surface temperatures there were really what was driving that. That puts in the energy into the system. And so as it went over the land, it weakened somewhat, but it's expected to go back up to a major hurricane status as it goes over that Gulf. The Gulf is not quite as warm as it was south of Cuba, but there's still plenty of moisture and plenty of warm water there to fuel that development of the storm. So it'll probably come on shore in Louisiana, not as a major storm, but as a high Category 2, because there is some colder water along the northern Gulf Coast. A lot of that has to do with the earlier storms we had because there was a lot of rain. All that rain is running off and it's cooler. And so that's keeping the Gulf temperatures a little bit cooler in the northern part. That's going to help the storm to weaken a little bit as it comes on shore. But if you see where the cone is of where it's likely to hit, it's almost exactly the same place that Hurricane Laura hit a few weeks ago.
And it really is. It's following a very similar path.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch how it's developed over time because they originally had it moving more over New Orleans. And as time has gone on, that path has been creeping just a little bit west. And that was the same thing with Laura as well. It's very hard to figure out exactly where it's going to go, but the models have been pretty consistent about bringing it through Louisiana. You can see here, this is the sort of the spaghetti plot of a lot of the different models, and they're pretty consistent about where they expect this storm to go. There's a little bit of differences in the timing, but not that much, and the spread is pretty small. at least until it makes landfall and then gets up into Mississippi. And so in a hurricane, generally the worst conditions are to the right of the track. And so probably be a little easier for Lake Charles and Texas this time, unless it decides to go farther west. But anything in the eastern half of Louisiana is going to see a lot of problems with rain, a lot of problems with wind, maybe some small tornadoes. And the surf, the high surf warnings and the storm surge could reach all the way to Mobile Bay or more. And so anywhere that's to the right of that track is going to have the potential for some pretty hefty rains. Not going to be continuous rain, but as these arms go through, we could get some pretty strong rains. Chance of maybe some small tornadoes and some gusty winds as well.
Now, Pam, as we come north, looking at the model streams here, and like you say, the worst of it's going to be to the right of this storm, just center and to the right.
Yeah.
What is that gonna lay for the farmers in Alabama and the farmers in Georgia that have cotton in the fields? Not to mention, we know what's going to happen in Mississippi. Everybody is at the point now. We're at the point of defoliation, and there's no room there. There's really no room for error.
Right. Well, the biggest impact in Georgia and probably most of Alabama is going to be some rain. The rain amounts aren't going to be huge. We're talking maybe half an inch, but it's a bad time of year to get any rain at all. The ground is already really wet, so it's hard to get equipment out into the fields. And you don't want to get the cotton wet just before you're ready to harvest it. It really does not do well for the yield. So what I think is, I don't think there's going to be a lot of problem with wind, which of course was the big problem with Michael almost exactly years ago, because everything was ready to go, and then the wind came in, and 100-mile-an-hour wind blew all that lint right off the plants. I don't think that's going to be a problem this time. I think the rain is really going to be the key this time. And once the storm goes by, it looks like we're going to have a window of about 6 to 10 days where we're not going to get much rain at all. So if we can do this, the harvest conditions should improve.
What about our temperatures? Are our temperatures going to come back up a little bit to allow some of the? We've got peanuts, like the Candler County peanuts that we were on yesterday. Those peanuts have been at 7 to 14 days for 21 days.
Yeah, I know. It's been pretty cool. Today was quite warm. When I walked outside, it was in the 80s here in Athens. And so I don't see any big cold outbreaks coming, at least until the mid-month, which is about as far out as we can look. But I don't see huge heat waves either. I think it's going to be seasonal to maybe a little bit above normal for temperature. But, it's better than nothing.
Oh, it's a lot better than nothing. I mean, it's better than getting a frost or a freeze.
Yeah, and I don't see that happening anytime soon, at least down here in the Southeast.
If we were to get a frost or a freeze in the Southeast like we did a couple of years ago in the middle of late October, well, we're just now defoliating a lot of areas. Yeah,
I was a little worried about that a week or so ago, but the outbreak that we were getting came in a lot weaker than we thought it would, and so I think there are only a few places that might have got nipped. The places that are always frost pockets and that always seem to get the frost, but the rest of us did pretty well. And I don't see any big cold outbreaks for a while, so I think that's really good news for the farmers.
Oh, I think so too. At least hopefully it'll get even all of us on the north end of Georgia where we can at least get our cotton in. Yep. Now, I was looking, of course, all the models, I'll post that back up. We had all the models are all, like you said, they're all right, fairly close together, aren't they?
It's really surprising because sometimes you don't have this much consistency from one model to the next. But you got to keep in mind that even small differences can make a big local difference. For example, when Laura came up, it was a little bit further to the east than they originally predicted, maybe only by 10, 20, 30 miles. But that was enough to save Lake Charles from the worst storm surge.
Yeah.
And the really bad storm surge was just to the east of there, where they did get some storm surge of up to 17 feet. But it was in an area that didn't have a lot going on. There was no big cities there, not even a lot of agriculture. And so didn't cause too much damage. So wherever this thing ends up going, anything that's just to the right of it is going to see the biggest surge and the biggest winds.
Now, I heard somebody say today, I was talking to somebody today, and he said, if this thing comes in at Homa, if it comes in west of Homa, it's not as bad for New Orleans as if it comes in at Homa. New Orleans is going to have it bad.
Yep. And that's just part of the idea of putting the worst conditions in the right side. But if it comes in a little further to the east, of course, it's going to be closer to New Orleans, and they're going to get more onshore wind that's going to blow this water up into Lake Pontchartrain. And you never know with those levees. The levees didn't hold very well in Katrina. They've tried to fix them up, but they haven't really been tested since then. So, we'll have to see what happens with that.
Now,
this is the wind gust map. Is that right?
Yeah, this wind. I thought this was a little interesting because
it is. You can see the biggest wind gusts are right around the eye. It's really interesting to look at this because if you look at it on the satellite picture, you don't really see much of an eye, which is unusual for a storm that's this strong. Usually there's a bigger eye. See, you can hardly see the eye at all. And that's pretty rare. Usually by now, with winds that strong, you'd be able to see an eye. But there is an eye. It's just real small, and it's covered by a high cloud, so you can't really get a good look at it. But around that eye, there's winds of gusts of 120 miles an hour or so, and it spreads out a ways. The storm has been growing. It's going to get wider over the next couple of days as it continues to move north over the Gulf because it's got all that energy to suck in. And so there's a fairly wide area where they're going to see some pretty significant gusts.
Now, what are the water temperatures like in the Gulf right now?
Well, in the southern half of the Gulf, they're above normal. As I mentioned earlier, the northern part of the Gulf, a little bit cooler. And the reason for that is partly the water's gotten stirred up by all these other hurricanes, but also we got a lot of drainage coming off the land from the rainfall from those earlier hurricanes. And that water that's draining off the land, especially now that it's been relatively cool, that water's cool too. And that's kind of putting a lid on the surface of the Gulf. So there's less heat capacity there for the hurricane to grow than there might have been a month ago.
Oh, and you're right. I mean, those other two storms have definitely calmed it down a little bit. Now, this is the maximum wind gust that I just putting in. It's actually showing a fairly wide area coming in. If that's going to be right.
Yeah, like I said, it's supposed to expand over the next couple days as it's out, gets away from the Yucatan Peninsula and gets out over the open Gulf there. There's no friction when you're over water, so it can really grow. And the water's warm enough still. It's early October, so it's still pretty warm. Is enough to really provide some fuel to expand it. And so I think if you put that wind thing back up a minute, can you go back one?
Yeah, I'll go back one. This one right here?
Yeah, thanks. So this one sort of assumes that the hurricane's going to come onshore just east of where Lake Charles is, because the strongest winds are usually just to the right of the path, near and to the right of the path. So if the track is a little different, you have to kind of visualize that whole thing shifting one way or the other. But yeah, there's a pretty wide area where the winds are going to be really strong. And, when the ground is that wet, anything that's still standing is going to be easy to blow over because the roots lose all their integrity. And they lost a lot of forest in the earlier storm. So this may be just a little different part of Louisiana, but they're going to lose a lot more pines from that. And they're going to also have problems with crops blowing over because they're so strong. And it's really hard to harvest that.
And we're just now hitting the time in the sugarcane industry. They're just now hitting harvest time.
Yeah, I saw the pictures from Laura earlier where a lot of the rice farmers even up in Arkansas were having problems because the rice all got blown over and made it really hard to harvest too. But the sugarcane was another one that was a big problem.
Oh, it truly was. Luckily now I think most of the guys have their corn in.
Yeah.
I think corn is not. We're going to have soybeans and cotton left to go.
Yeah,
Now,
I've been seeing pictures of people that have been scrambling like crazy to try to get stuff in early this week because they know this rain is coming and the wind is coming. And so they've been taking advantage of these last few days to really work long hours to try to get things in. They all remember Michael too, especially the people down in Southwest Georgia. And they don't want to be caught that way again.
No, and one of the hardest things I think you remember that night, it was me and you and Kenny Woodham, and Kenny was going through Michael and listening to his conversation and talking to him. It was just crazy.
It was scary. And I didn't even get down there for months afterwards, but my technicians of the weather network said it looked like there was a tornado that was 25 miles wide that went through that area. Yeah. There was so much damage.
Oh, yeah. Now, the question on the one I've got up right now, the question on the graph that we've got up right now, I was looking at this earlier and I was going to ask you and then I forgot about it. If you're looking at it, in the upper panhandle of Texas, where all that blue is that a front that is going to steer Delta a different direction, like towards us, like whether that front gets south or north?
No, there's big high pressure over the center part of the U.S. and part of that is contributing to the drought that they're having in the western part of the U.S. and even the central part of the U.S. So there's not a lot of fronts around right now. So it's moving mostly under the influence of the subtropical high pressure that's usually off the Atlantic, but is kind of stretched into the U.S. And it takes that typical sort of C pattern where it does this loop, goes northwest, then goes north, and then curves to the northeast over time. Very typical pattern for a hurricane. And I don't really see that there's going to be any interaction with the front, which is good because that means if there's no front, there's no big temperature variation we have to worry about.
Oh, absolutely. Now, this storm is looking at coming ashore basically in Friday, Saturday?
No, Friday. I think Friday afternoon, probably.
Okay. So Friday and then Saturday as it moves north we're going to see weather deteriorate. Now, I have seen I've seen 3 different rain range forecasts. Try saying that one 3 times. But I've seen several of those, and every one of them's different, Pam. Every one of them.
It depends on the path, partly. It depends on the Hurricane Center ones are, I think, a little misleading because they don't really show the rain that we might get in Georgia, which is not going to be exactly directly from the center of the hurricane, but it's going to be from these spiral bands that lead out ahead of it. So you get a band of rain that'll come through, and it could rain pretty hard, but it probably isn't going to last a long time. In those bands, you might even find a few little tornadoes. We get those once in a while. But I think if you look at overall, the expectation is that the northern half of Georgia is going to get more rain than the southern half. Southern half is going to get it fairly early, so they might see rain even already on Thursday afternoon into the evening. And then as that storm moves up to the north and then moves northeast, it's going to bring the center of the rainiest weather along with it. So it'll cross through Mississippi and maybe Alabama. Some of the models even have it clipping the northwest corner of Georgia. Not clear. The latest models have put it up a little bit farther to the north, but there's going to definitely be rain there, and they'll probably get, 1 to 2 inches total out of it. We're going to get more in North Georgia eventually because that storm is going to go right over them. But they will definitely get some in South Georgia as well.
Now, I heard we heard one thing today that said some areas of Alabama, central and even northeast Alabama, could see up to 60-mile-an-hour gusts.
Yeah, they're close enough. And, it depends critically on, well, for one thing, where the storm goes, because the farther west it goes, the lower the gusts will be in Alabama. But also how big the storm is when it hits, because the wider it is, the bigger the area that the gusts are that they're gonna cover. So it would not surprise me, especially up in the western half of the state, the northwestern part, when the storm comes closer, that they might definitely see some gusts that big, and that's going to cause some issues for trees and for cotton, anything that can blow over or blow down.
Yeah. And corn that hasn't been picked.
Soybeans. Yeah, that's true. I always think of the corn as being done this time of year, but that's mostly South Georgia. North Georgia's working on that, and so that's going to be a problem for them.
And the problem is, the problem is right now it's not drying down. We haven't had conditions. We've had corn that's been 18% for 3 weeks.
Yep. Yeah, it's with the cool temperatures, you don't get a lot of evaporation, so you don't get much moisture leaving the corn.
No, and then we've had fog.
Yeah.
We had a heavy fog this morning.
Well, the ground is just incredibly wet from all these earlier storms, and not even just the tropical storms, but the other stuff we've had too. And so if you get any sunlight, it evaporates all that water and keeps the air really moist. And so you're not going to get much drying of the corn under those conditions. And, it's going to take a lot to get all that water out of the ground, even though it's fairly sandy soil, at least in South Georgia. But much, it takes a long time. And then, of course, you get the sun that comes in and you get clouds develop because there's all that moisture there, or fog, as you pointed out. And that also keeps the temperatures down. It's been interesting to note that a lot of the daytime temperatures have not been that warm. It's the nighttime temperatures that are high. And the nighttime temperatures really reflect how much humidity we have.
Yep. And I haven't had a chance to sit down with Dr. Bob and talk to him, but I have seen some of the disasters he has had to post the last few weeks because of these weather conditions.
Well, I mean, the amount of mold that he's seen and fungal diseases is just incredible. He said that it's one of the worst years he's ever seen.
Yeah. And we were trying to figure out a few weeks ago, right before the hurricane came in, and we noticed they had dug up a bunch of peanuts at Statesboro.
Yep.
And the next day I saw him post the pictures of that field, and I would have cried. I would have literally cried. When you have 100-acre peanut field and you just might as well take dollar bills and throw them out the window.
Yeah, some of that you can control with if you put in the right chemicals on the right timing. But man, you got to spend a lot to do it this year because you'd have to apply it so often, and that's really cost effective.
You're talking every 7 days.
That's right.
7 to 8 days.
And that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time in the seed. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And it was, I've seen some white mold. We've looked at a few fields the last 2 weeks that had white mold just showed up overnight. I saw a peanut field, and it was a rough night when we looked at it. He had spider mites in the peanut field, and we had had a really bad thunderstorm, and the wind, not a lot of rain. But guess where the spider mites ended up? His cotton field next door.
Yeah.
And you could tell where the wind had blown, and what are you going to do?
Right. Well, you can't stop the wind, so I guess you're stuck.
Yeah, this late in the season, how do you fight it?
Right. Well, it's just mostly a battle of just trying to keep what you can and not allow things to get worse. But yeah, it's been tough this year.
It really has. It has been absolutely, it was wet in the beginning. Then it dried off.
Yep.
Then we got wet again. I mean, it's been up and down this year.
Yeah.
And of course, you feel sorry for the guys in Iowa that got hit.
The derecho. Yeah, that was terrible.
Oh, that was awful. I heard somebody say, well, it's not that bad. Well,
if you can see it from space, it's bad.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was fixing to say.
You can see the pictures of just fields, miles and miles that were blown over. And some of that they could harvest. some of it wasn't blown over. Some of it sort of righted itself, but a lot of it was just, they might as well just have plowed it over because there's just,
Could you imagine?
Some of them did.
You're talking cornfields that are a mile and a half, 2 miles long. Could you imagine you're only able to harvest in one direction?
I know it takes a lot of time to do that.
Just go ahead and shoot me now before we get started, because by the time I'm on my 4th or 5th round, I'm going to be ready to shoot somebody.
Right. Well, you know, farmers are brave. They do things that no sane person would do. and we love them for it because we eat that food. You know, they don't get the credit they deserve. But this has been a rough year. There's no doubt about that.
You know, I was talking to somebody the other day, and you know, it's bad when you look at things now, and sad to say it, 30 some odd years ago, we're making the same amount of money now that we were 30 years ago. Just a whole lot more input cost. Yeah,
well, and if you don't put the input in, then the yields go way down and you can't compete.
Yeah.
And exactly. You don't make any money either. So
now what in your crystal ball, and I know you're good, you have a good one. What are we looking at for a winner? Yeah, hey, look, we've had a good one. You were good last time. What are you thinking roughly? What's everything saying that what we're looking at for the winter?
Right. Well, what we're seeing right now is the start of a La Nina. Now, in Georgia, we can be either in an El Nino, a La Nina, or somewhere in between, which we call neutral. And right now we're in a La Nina, which is related to cold water in the Eastern Pacific Ocean. Now, you wouldn't think it would make much difference here, but on the global scale, actually, it does shift the weather patterns around. And when we have a La Nina, we have active hurricane seasons in the summer and fall, which is what we're seeing. In winter months, we expect to see warmer and drier conditions than usual, especially in the south half of Georgia and Alabama. The whole weather pattern gets shifted up to the north, so they get more rain up in the Ohio River Valley, and South Alabama don't get a whole lot.
So that means Brent gets more rain and snow than we get.
I guess so.
Brent's in Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, so we're overdue.
Yeah,
we haven't had a bad winter in quite a few years. So
yeah, it'll be colder this year probably. Since it's going to be fairly warm and dry, I think a lot of that soil moisture that's still sitting out there now is going to go away. So we'll have to watch carefully to see what happens over the winter, because we could end up fairly dry by spring, and that could be a problem going into the next growing season.
Very big problem.
Most of our droughts in Georgia have happened the summer after we had a La Nina.
Oh, really?
And yeah, that's something that we're going to have to watch. It's a long ways down the road. There's an awful lot of moisture out there now. So really, we won't know until about April 1st what it's going to look like. But it would not surprise me if a lot of our excess soil moisture goes away. Now, that's good or bad. It's just the way it happens. Of course, in the winter, we're not growing a whole lot either. But when we get down to the end of it, and this isn't supposed to be a really long one or a strong one, so probably it will go away by next summer, maybe even next spring. But the conditions certainly look like there'll be sunny conditions over the winter. Relatively warm and dry. I mean, it's still going to be winter, so we'll still get some cold weather. But I think not necessarily a really big outbreak. But
no
outbreaks are weather; they're not climate, and so you can, even in a La Nina winter, you can still have cold outbreaks. So don't get up yet.
The hardest thing for us was 3 years ago. They said, "Oh, you're only going to get 1/4 of an inch in Rockmart at the most." And I kept looking. I actually had been looking. You guys had posted some stuff, and several others had posted. And I'm like, we're going to get a whole lot more than 1/4 of an inch. And then sure enough, of course, everybody's watching TV, and they're like, well, TV says 1/4 of an inch. I'm like, well, this is what we see. And it started snowing, and it kept snowing. And 10 inches later, our 1/4 of an inch.
Yeah. Snow is tricky because it's like hurricanes. If you have just a small difference in where the path of that storm goes, you can have a huge difference in the impacts. And so in that case, the storm moved a little bit, probably farther to the south of you, which puts you in the area of the really heaviest snowstorm, because you got enough moisture that's coming in wrapped around the low, but you're cool the air so that it's snow and not rain. So that was certainly the case there, and that's a tricky thing to forecast. We don't get enough snowstorms here to make them really good at it, but they're improving, but there are a lot of problems with that.
I just
I'm glad I'm not a forecaster. Let me just put it that way.
Oh yeah, but see, here's the thing. I wonder sometimes if they just throw a dart at the wall.
Well, I've been to the Weather Service offices, and I've never seen a dartboard, but maybe they keep it in the back room.
Well, Pam, I appreciate it. It looks like we're going to have a rough few days coming in for the Southeast anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm hopeful that it's not going to be too bad here in Georgia. We'll get some rain, but hopefully not too much wind. And even the amount of rain, I don't think is going to be really excessive. We're not going to probably see 10 or 20 inches. The storm's moving at a better clip, and so you don't get as much rain in any one spot. It gets more distributed out. But it's a tough time of year because some people don't want any rain at all right now.
Well, the hard thing for us is if we get any wind over about 25 or 30 miles an hour, that cotton, the cotton that's opened up is not going to stand to that wind.
No. Well, we'll have to see. I mean, some of those spiral bands could have some winds with them. I know the pecan farmers are worried about it too.
Yes.
The trees are so loaded that they're worried about if there's any wind, the limbs are just going to break.
Well, we were watching. I was at Benji and Garrett Anderson's in Sylvania last week, and literally the trees were so heavy, a good breeze and a limb would break and hit the ground.
Yeah, and they're still recovering in the Southwest from Michael and in the Southeast from Irma. Both of those storms caused a lot of problems to the pecan farmers. And so, am I saying that right? I'm from the North, or is it pecan? Pecan. I don't even know.
Pam, there we go. You have just created our first controversy of the day.
Okay, well.
That goes back
from the North, I call it pecan.
That goes back to my post this last weekend on bacon, crunchy or crispy, and I never, for the life of me,
and my answer is yes.
Yeah.
Bacon, yes,
absolutely. I never imagined that I would have that many people comment.
I saw that. That was crazy.
And then somebody said turkey bacon.
Oh no. I like it okay. It's probably good for your heart, but man, give me the real stuff.
I'm gonna show you something. 2 weeks ago, I went to heaven.
Oh man, look at that. That looks great.
I brought back several hams. Every time we go to the office in Missouri, Broadbent Hams is up there at Cuttawa, Kentucky.
Oh. And you fill up your truck, right?
They have the best bacon. They have just hams that are out of this world. And then I buy something that people look at me like I'm stupid. I buy ham fat.
No, that's good. You're adventurous. There's nothing wrong with that.
Do you know what ham fat does with some foods?
It gives it that nice extra flavor.
Yeah. Oh, it does. It does.
Yep.
Where's your sense of adventure for people? But right. I could get in trouble. The minute you walk in the door at Broadbent, there is this phenomenal smell. And it's a smell that no one will ever understand. I would love to have my own smokehouse one time.
You need to have them visit you sometime and talk about what they do to make those hams so good.
Oh, they won't let you in there with cameras. I already tried. We were going to go in a couple of years ago. I bought 41 hams from them at one time.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I bought 41 15-pound hams.
I'm sure it's a secret family recipe.
The guy looked at me and he says, "What are you going to do with these?" I said, "It's Thanksgiving. I'm giving Christmas gifts." He said, "You're going to be well loved." And sure enough, I mean, like one of the things I learned that I had never known about was cooking a salt country cured ham in a crock pot with brown sugar and pineapple.
That sounds good to me.
I'm like, he said, "Well, you got to make sure you soak it in water for 24 hours with brown sugar in the water." Yeah. But he mixes brown sugar in the water when you soak it. So as the salt leaves, it pulls the brown sugar into the ham.
That makes sense. I'd think about maybe putting a little bourbon or something in there too. But
see, now that would be cool.
There you go. Now you're talking the Kentucky language.
Bert, our agronomist, Bert.
I don't know if that would work or not, but it sounds good anyway.
I can tell you from experience that it does work.
Okay.
You just made Bert the happiest man in the world. You said bourbon and ham. That just made him happy.
All right. Well, good.
Yeah, we've tried it with some bourbon and some Coca-Cola. Too caramelized real nicely, as long as you don't get it too hot. Whew, nice glaze on it.
Yeah, he told me. He said, don't even put the crock pot when you cook it. Don't even put the crock pot on low. Leave it on warm the whole time.
Wow. And you could only do that if it's already cooked, though. If it was not cooked, you would never do it. He said the way the warm is set up on most crock pots, it's actually just a little bit below low. And he said it takes a slower, longer cook. And he said all the flavor will cook in. He said, you're not going to cook it for 5-6 hours. You're going to cook it for 14 or 15 hours. Wow. He
said, but it'll fall apart in your hands when you go to eat it. I'm like,
now you're making me hungry now.
Look, let's see here. Look.
You're just trying to tempt me. I'll have to go look online to see if I can order one.
Oh, yeah, you can.
All right. Well, I'm going to be here for Thanksgiving. Maybe we'll have ham for Thanksgiving then. But Broadbent meats of and it's the most reasonable. You look online and you see all these stupid prices. Yeah. And that's why when I go in there, they look at me funny, but I'll say, give me 4, give me 5, give me whatever, you know. They don't go bad. You don't have to refrigerate them. That's well, then they're cooked right. Yeah. Yep. But it has been now, Pam, we've got, based on this storm, we're only got a few more weeks of hurricane season, right? Well, I mean, technically it ends at the end of November. But if you look at a couple of the active years, like the last one was 2005, which was, of course, the year we had Katrina and Wilma. But we went all the way, I think, into 6 or 7 letters in the Greek alphabet that year, and they went into December. And so it's possible that we could still see something happening, especially if the ocean temperatures stay warm. We could still see some activity even into December. It's not going to be a lot. Of course, that time of year, the storms are never as strong, but we could still see some weather coming out of that. So even though the official end is November 30, would not surprise me this year if it went a little past that. Yeah, and that's not necessarily the best of things. No, but you got to keep in mind that, the tropical weather is important in Southeast too, because it brings us our rain. If we don't have tropical storms, we go into a drought. Yeah. Because the water here, the soil here doesn't hold a lot of water. So you got to have regular rain. Now this year we got more than we needed of a good thing, but we need to have some kind of tropical activity to bring in rain in the summer months, or we really get dry fast. It was I was talking with someone the other day, and I can't really remember. They were talking about when the last time an Atlantic storm came in. We have not had many. I think David was the last one. I was going to say David in 79? Yeah, 80? But think about some of the other ones that have hit, like Florence. didn't hit that far north of Georgia. If the steering patterns had been a little different, it could have come in. And if you look at the history of hurricanes in Georgia, in the 1890s, we had two really bad ones that came in from the Atlantic and caused a lot of problems there. You know, all along the ocean front there, they had a lot of problems with storm surge of 20 feet or more in places like Savannah. So it's only a matter of time before it happens again. That was a period. The weather patterns were set up so that it was bringing in those storms from the Atlantic. We haven't had that in 100 years, but sooner or later we're going to go back that way. And you know, a lot of the people that live along the coast have never experienced that kind of a storm, so they're not going to know what to do. You know,
look at places like Hilton Head. Look at Hilton Head. Hilton Head is so built up now.
That's right. That's right.
A 20-foot
storm that came in like Hugo. Hugo was crazy.
Yeah. Hugo came in Charleston and went on up through Asheville and Charlotte.
Yep.
And
oh, it was crazy. I flew through Asheville the day after Hugo came through, and I had to fly through Charlotte. And I can remember coming in for a landing, and the rivers were just red because of all the erosion from all the rainstorms. And the trees were all knocked over because Hugo, it was 70 miles an hour, you know, like 100 miles inland. It was moving so fast. It was just nuts.
I was surprised when the storm came through the other day, how high the Ogeechee got and how high the Savannah River got in such a short period of time.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, we've lost a lot of wetlands that can really moderate the amount of rain that comes down, and there's more pavement, so everything drains faster. And so the rivers get higher than they used to because of that.
Yeah. Now, how was it when it came through that, like Warren County, wasn't it Warren County or Sandersville got 7 inches in like just a matter of a couple of hours?
Yeah, I know they got a lot. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was pretty heavy rain. And it just happened to set up right over them, so they got all that rain in a pretty short period. One of our UGA weather stations got a similar amount, not too far away. I think it was in Lawrence County, but pretty close. Wow. And it was just the way that it's set up. You know, every storm's a little bit different, and you get one of these spiral arms that parks over you, and you can get a lot of rain in a short period of time.
Now, tell us about the UGA weather system. How many stations do y'all have? And tell us a little bit about the program, Pam.
Yeah, the UGA Weather Network has been around since 1991. So some of our stations have been there for almost 30 years. We have 86 stations across the state. So it's definitely not one per county. But, you know, Georgia has a lot of counties. So that would be tough to do, but they're pretty equally distributed across the state, and they're all identical stations. They have sensors on them to measure wind speed and direction, temperature, humidity, solar radiation. That we've got soil temperature and soil moisture sensors, and we've got pressure. So we measured all those over long time periods. We measure them at 15-minute increments, and then we do daily summaries as well. And so, you know, all this stuff is used by a variety of farming groups. Of course, UGA research scientists use the data as well. Utility companies will use it to help do load forecasting sometimes. And we also provide weather information to the National Weather Service because it really expands their network to monitor for severe weather. And so they use it. There was a station earlier this year, remember all those storms in South Georgia in April? We had a tornado that went less than a mile from our Moultrie station, and that station reported, I think, wind in the 70 mile per hour range. And Michael, 2 years ago, our station in Donaldsonville got up to 115 miles an hour because they were right in the eye wall of Michael, and it survived the storm, which is amazing. Those things aren't really.
Did it stay up?
I'll tell you, the company that made those instruments was happy.
Oh yeah. Could you?
So these things have been around for a long time.
Did it stay up and constantly sending information?
It did. I mean, some of the wires that connected the instruments were kind of flapping around, and it did lose its solar panel. But fortunately, it had a battery, so the battery was able to back up the weather data. A couple of the stations were still upright, but they're kind of tipped over a little bit. So you kind of information was that good. Temperature was okay. The wind, the precipitation gauges are pretty close to the ground, so they didn't blow over. But when you have wind that is that strong, it's really hard to get a good rainfall measurement too, because a lot of it's right over the top of the gauge.
I was going to say most of it's going this way.
It's going sideways, yeah. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. But yeah, they do a really excellent job, and they're all on cell modems now. It used to be that they were on hard lines, but it was so expensive to pay for all those phone lines, especially because they're all out in the middle of fields in the middle of nowhere. So it's expensive to get a phone line out there. So everything's on cell modems now. And the only time we really lose power is when the cell towers go down, which after Michael, of course, a lot of the cell towers got blown down. And so we lost the data temporarily for a while because we couldn't get the communications going, but all the data was still stored at the stations, and we got that back later. And some of it is now in the report from the National Hurricane Center on Michael. You can see records from some of our stations in there, including the Donaldsonville one.
I bet it was so cool to go back afterwards and to look at the data of, as the hours progressed on the storms.
It's really cool to see it now. Every time we think we're going to have a hurricane come, I tell my guys they got to make sure everything's ready, that our universal power supply is all charged up and ready to go, because we don't want to lose any of that data because people depend on it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely do.
Yeah.
Well, Pam, I appreciate you greatly for being with us tonight. I really do.
I had a great time. This is fun.
Oh, yeah, it really is. It unfortunately, it's not the situation we wanted to be in, but
I know. I'd love to hear stories from some of the people who've been through some of the bad weather, but I guess that will have to wait for time.
I tell you what we will probably do in a week or so, once everything kind of calms down and we see what comes through, we'll come back. We'll bring a couple of the guys on that have gone through it and that kind of thing, and talk about what they saw. And we might get Kenny to come on and talk about what he did when he went through Michael and what occurred afterwards.
Yeah, well, it's a big problem because people don't realize how long it's going to take to get help, and how important it is to be able to help your neighbors as well, because emergency managers are just overwhelmed trying to help everybody. And so there's a lot of help can come from your neighbors, but preparation ahead of time is good too if you've got generators and things like that.
Yep. Exactly. Well, Pam Knox with UGA, I'm so glad you joined us tonight. I am too. Anytime. Brent, talk to us about your week, what we got on the show and your shows this week. By the way, did you see Allie Colleen's post today?
Yeah, happy anniversary to Allie.
Yeah, happy anniversary, Allie.
That's good. They're great people, and happy anniversary to them. Five was it 2 years married, 5 years together. So that's really sweet. And Jonathan's a really great guy.
They are a great couple altogether. They really are. They are just down to earth from what I've seen.
Yeah, and for anybody that doesn't know, Allie Colleen is the youngest daughter of Garth Brooks, and has a great performing career of her own here, coming into her own as an artist in Nashville, and I think the world of those guys. So happy anniversary to them. We had a good show last night. Mira Godo, who's another up-and-coming country artist out of Nashville by way of Santa Cruz, California, was on the show. Did just an absolutely tremendous job. She's burning up the charts right now with some new music. So it was exciting to have her on there, and hard at work on episode 75 of the podcast right now, which is going to drop Friday morning. About 3 weeks ago, we had on a representative of AHW LLC, which is a 16-store John Deere dealership in East Central Illinois and West Central Indiana, to talk about just the drive and the desire to recruit and retain service technicians. It's a huge problem, not just for Deere, but for all the manufacturers and all the dealers across the country. And so we're picking up a second part of that discussion this week with Henry Wyckoff and Kevin Ash with AHW. Henry's the corporate service manager and Kevin's the assistant corporate service manager. and he was actually just a technician up until a few months ago before he took that. So he kind of brings it from that perspective, and also talk a bit about the programs going on with junior colleges and some of the post-secondary programs out there that are preparing folks for careers in the service technician field here, because they're talking about a shortage nationwide of conservatively 3,000 to 4,000 people as the stuff gets increasingly more complicated. And also, as you see that circle of repair grow, as a lot of the equipment that was purchased in the downturn 2008, 2009 now is starting to age and is in need of repair. And most of these guys are just are chasing their tail, trying to keep up with the workload here, and just begging for more workers.
That's something people don't realize. People do not realize that we are running short of technicians in this country in a very large fashion.
Well, and they find it from an interesting perspective. Is that especially on new units, you're talking about a $300,000-$400,000 piece of equipment that you really are only pressing into service when you desperately need it. And if anything breaks on that, and I've been a service advisor before, I know how this works. If you pick up the phone, you're going to get the brunt of any kind of complaints or any kind of aggravation. You didn't build it. You didn't have a hand in that. You didn't break it. But by God, they want it fixed and they need it like yesterday. So then the heat is on those guys.
When it comes to a farm, it's just like today. We got back today. We pulled up in the field. This is not an exaggeration. We were in the field for less than 30 seconds. Daryl came by us. A minute later, he comes screaming back in the combine, smoke coming off. He'd lost the belts. She was running. The old girl was running hot, and it just, you make that call, and guess what? You in your mind, you're the only person broke down, but the poor service advisor has 25 or 30 farms in the same region that are all in the same situation.
Yeah, and those guys are pedaling as hard as they can here to keep up with the workload. It's just it's not easy, and these things get more and more complex. And of course, there's a lot with onboard diagnostics and the electronics where you can patch in corporate folks to kind of poke around in there and help you out if it's an electronic issue. But if it's a mechanical issue, you're just kind of at the mercy of it. And then the other variable in all this is COVID. A lot of folks dealing in parts are still kind of behind the 8 ball on some stuff. So you may be slow getting parts that you need.
Parts are a huge issue right now. Parts are a huge issue. Nicole, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I am tired. It's been a long day. I've been at parent-teacher conferences all night. And I'm talked out.
So are they doing them in person or are they doing them by Zoom?
In person.
Wow.
I am in a gym right now.
Wow.
There's no parents here.
That's space.
We're ending in 7 minutes, and there's no more parents, and I'm hoping nobody walks in the next few minutes.
Yeah, I guess everybody wants to go listen to the debate, right? So
I want to go home. I got packing to do. So
yeah, we all have a meeting in Malden, Missouri, Friday morning.
That's a 9.5-hour drive for me here in Nebraska. So
wow.
I'm leaving right after school tomorrow and driving, I think, a little bit past Springfield. And then we're probably getting a hotel at like midnight somewhere past Springfield. I haven't really figured that out yet. And then we're driving the rest of the way to Malden on Friday morning. So,
and one of us, which happens to be in a combine right now, complaining about rotten soybeans, is only an hour from the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully she will find somewhere to bring donuts to the meeting.
Oh, I'm bringing kolaches.
Oh,
I'm bringing kolache. Pam, do you know what kolaches are?
I do. I
'Cause
do. They're
Brandon doesn't
great.
know what a kolache is, or a
Well,
kolache if you're doing singular.
I'm
If you
from
know
the
what
north where
kolache is, mark it
there's
in the
people that make those.
put it in the announcement or in the comments. If anybody here's still watching us, if you know what a kolache is or a kolache, say
I know what a colonoscopy is.
a kolache and a colonoscopy are not the same thing.
One is much more pleasant than the other.
Yep. I would not be a good check if I did not know what a kolache is. So I am bringing, and they're going to be fresh. They are coming straight from the bakery. They're probably still going to be warm when I pick them up after school tomorrow, and I'm driving them to Malden, so they will be perfect. And they're coming straight from the Czech capital of the United States to your stomach, Brandon.
Well, you better make sure you get there then.
Oh, she's going to have to be there. If she's not,
Yeah.
I'm coming to get her in an aircraft.
I'm going to be there.
By the way, I'm going to send you a picture of the latest sticker for my helmet.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
You know, it has a fun meter stuck on it, but then it also has it says stop screaming, I'm scared too.
I wish I had that for my classroom.
So, you know, especially if I'm flying and you're looking at the back of my helmet, that's why I want it there. So that whoever's flying, I still love my idea of skydiving. I want to do that. Just one day in my life, I want to do that.
Skydiving?
Pam, no, I want to be able to, when we take off and we're flying, I want to be able to, the left-hand seat in the plane, you can't see from where the skydivers are. I want just one time to take off and be in the right-hand pilot seat. And as we get to the upper level, get out, stand up, and run out of the airplane and jump out with my chute on and just watch everybody else's reaction.
And they gave you a pilot's license?
Huh?
They gave you a pilot's license? Lord help us.
I've had one for a while.
I know, that's what scares me. They haven't taken it away yet.
But I'm not cleared back to flight yet after being sick, so they won't clear me to fly.
I was going to say, why are you driving all these long distances when you can fly?
Man, if I have to make a trip to Malden every week, I'm going to have to get my own airplane because
They-
9.5
Pam,
hours is a lot.
When I got sick, Pam, the doctor still will not clear me from
Wow.
sick
Yep.
to fly. And here's the bad thing about it. My surgeon is from a farm family. He is on farm life. He watches what I am doing, and when I call to talk about how I feel or something that's hurting, his very first word is stupidity does not count as enough. His family has about 8,000 acres of soybeans.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
And they're in the Mississippi River Delta. So they're in the flood range. That's I would be a nervous wreck. I would have to be sedated to farm in that area, knowing that it floods out every year or two. But yeah, we will be. We're going to be in Malden in the studio then Friday and having some fun. Hopefully, we'll have some neat things to talk about after that. But we're good. Well, gang, it's that time of night where we got to get out of here. Pam Knox, University of Georgia, I appreciate you greatly.
I'm happy to be here.
Brent Adams, as always.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
Queen Bee, Nicole. I will see you Friday.
Yes, we're actually going to meet. I can prove that you're a real person now.
Well, no, that won't prove a whole lot.
They say never to meet people you've met on the internet, and I'm driving home to meet a whole bunch of people I've met on the internet. So they especially say don't go meet old guys that you meet on the internet. So
Now,
I'm
here's
every
the
rule.
bad thing. You're going to have to put up with me and Kelly both in the same room with you and RJ for several hours.
I know.
And I will not be allowed to have my cell phone in that office while we're in there. So somebody better sedate me prior, because
Who's going to call you if I'm in the room with you?
I'm going to be bouncing. I'm bringing the bouncy balls from my bathtub.
Oh, Lord. The only reason RJ's coming is because my mom thinks I'm going to get sex trafficked for meeting a whole bunch of random people on the internet. That's why he's coming. Look, Mom, I am 31 years old. Like, I think I know what I'm doing.
Good night, everybody.
Night, Brent.
On that note, we're going to end.
Good night, y'all. And for everybody else, on behalf of Concept Agritech, Fastline Fast Track, Gateway C, you guys have a great night, a great rest of the week coming up, and we'll come back live later this week having some fun. In the meantime, you guys have a great night. Bye.
Bye.